We have 45 minutes to give you as much information as possible, and I will start us off by sharing the agenda. I'll first introduce tonight's panelists and give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. Then I will give a brief overview of the application process. Next, I will go over ITF's program timeline. Then I will spend some time going over program information. You'll then hear from Haley Downs about TNTP's AmeriCorps program, with Joy Dominguez available to answer questions in the chat about that program. And then lastly, you'll have a chance to have your questions answered by tonight's panelists. And then you can ask your questions by dropping them into either the chat or the Q&A. And we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible tonight. So tonight's panelists include myself. Again, I'm Katrina Adrian, the recruitment specialist for Indianapolis Teaching Fellows. We also have Rico Francis, who is ITF's program manager. And we have Haley Downs, site advisor for ITF, BWC, and TNTP's AmeriCorps program. And then we have Joy Dominguez, who is the program manager for TNTP AmeriCorps. I would also love to hear from each of you. So if you would like to, you can share your name and the city that you live in, and then something good that happened to you this week in the chat. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and we're going to get started. So Indianapolis Teaching Fellows transforms talented people into exceptional teachers for our underserved students. While there's lots of uncertainty right now, we do know that Indianapolis students will need committed and dedicated teachers this fall, more than ever. Now I'd like to go over the application process. First, candidates must submit an application in our application system, which is called SurveyMonkey Apply. The next application deadline is coming up really quickly on February 23rd, which is Tuesday. And some subject areas are already filling up, so I do encourage you to apply soon if you are interested. If selected to move forward, applicants must next complete an interview. Applicants will complete a recorded interview and can expect to hear a decision back within about 2 weeks after the interview has been submitted. Those selected to move forward after the interview will enter ITF's offered stage. The offered stage is a pre-enrollment stage, and finalists will have to complete 6 tasks, which I'll go into in more detail a little further on in the presentation. Once all offered tasks are completed, submitted, and reviewed, the candidate is enrolled in ITF's 2021 cohort. And please remember, if you have questions, drop them into the Q&A in the chat. So now I will give a brief overview of ITF's program timeline. Enrolled fellows will begin pre-service training and will work to secure a teaching position in spring of 2021. And then PST historically begins in late May and ends in early July, and training is typically 6 weeks long. Fellows who successfully complete pre-service training and all requirements, including getting hired at one of our partner schools, will begin teaching in the 2021-2022 school year. During their first 2 years of teaching, fellows complete coursework for both their certification and a Master's of Arts in Teaching from Marian University, which is our partner university. And then during this time, fellows also receive coaching from an ITF coach for their first year and from a Marian University coach for their second year. So our fellows are supported throughout their first 2 years of teaching. At the end of their first 2 years of teaching, fellows who have passed all program and testing requirements are then eligible to apply for their professional license in Indiana. Okay, now I will spend some time going over program information. So first, let's talk a little bit about program eligibility. To be eligible to apply for ITF, applicants must hold a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited college or university. And ITF requires a GPA of a 3.0 or a 2.5 with 5 years of professional experience. But there are exceptions made to these rules on a case-by-case basis. So I encourage you to apply even if you do not meet this requirement. And you can always reach out to me, Katrina, at info@tntpteachingfellows.org if you ever have a question about GPA or any of the other eligibility requirements. GPAs must be reported accurately in your application. Applicants must be eligible to work in the United States. You'll have to pass a background check. And all applicants must meet state of Indiana requirements for your subject area. And then lastly, all of our applicants must have never held an Indiana transition to teaching permit or a professional license from Indiana or any other state. But just to note that we often get applicants who hold emergency permits or substitute licenses, and those are fine. All right, next I will talk a little bit about ITF's testing requirements. So ITF does not require an entrance exam. Instead, fellows must submit a test score for a previously taken test. And those tests could be the SAT, the ACT, the GRE, the Praxis Core, or applicants can have a master's degree transcript. And there's no minimum score requirement for these previously taken test scores. And this is something that is submitted at enrollment. Fellows who do not have a master's degree transcript or a test score will be moved to secondary review at Marian University. So we really strongly encourage our candidates who've never taken one of these tests and who don't have a master's degree to take one of these tests to secure their Marian University enrollment. And then content exams are taken during a fellow's second year of teaching. ITF encourages fellows to complete this testing early and often to allow for time to pass. There are some instances where a fellow will have to pass their content exam early, and our selections team will notify you if you fall into that bucket. But remember, you're not required to take or pass a test before enrolling. So once a candidate has gone through the application process, has interviewed, and is selected to move forward, a candidate will reach the offered stage. And there are 6 pre-enrollment tasks or offer tasks that are required to enroll. So they're responding to a survey. This gives you a chance to just ask any questions that you still need answers to from the application process or about the program and its requirements. And then here's also where you'll indicate that testing history. You'll sign a commitment agreement. You'll list all the institutions of higher education you've ever attended, and that includes non-degree programs and transfer credits. You'll apply to Marian University to the ITF Summer 2021 MAT program there. And you'll upload a proof of 1 transcript and send those directly to Marian University. And then finally, there's a survey in which you can indicate that you accept your offer. Once all of those items are submitted and reviewed, at that point, you are officially enrolled. Just a reminder that if you have any questions about any of this or anything else, drop those questions into the Q&A or the chat. All right, so a little bit about pre-service training. It is historically held at the end of May, through early July 2021. 6 weeks, thereabouts. It's Monday through Friday, typically 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you're looking at a full work day. And fellows should be prepared for either in-person or virtual PST. Because of uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, the ITF team is currently planning for both. And fellows should likewise plan for either scenario, as both remain options for training at this point. During pre-service training, fellows learn the proven teaching techniques and foundational skills that they need to make a strong start in the classroom. So speaking of classrooms, let's talk about finding a job. Fellows are responsible for securing their own teaching position at one of our ITF's partner schools, but ITF does offer support. So you'll get hiring ready once you enroll by creating a resume and a school hiring bio. And ITF really encourages fellows to conduct research about their partner schools so you can find a place that's the best fit for you. And then ITF shares those fellows' resumes with our partner school principals. And then they offer other things like networking and hiring events throughout the spring. just as additional points of contact and opportunities for our fellows to get hired. And for this year, hiring for ITF's 2021 cohort has already begun, and we have already had some fellows secure their teaching positions for 2021. So what are ITF's partner schools? I know I've talked about partner schools a little bit so far. There are many ITF partners with 45 district and charter school networks in Center Township, Indianapolis, including Indianapolis Public Schools. Don't forget to drop those questions in the Q&A or the chat. Now I will share a little information about tuition. Tuition is approximately $12,450 for the 2-year program. This includes additional fees that, or does not include rather, additional fees that are associated with hiring. So things like your background check and testing fees that are not included in that tuition cost. Payment plans are available, and fellows can defer payments until their 2nd year of teaching and their 2nd year of earning a full teacher's salary. There are some resources available to help with tuition. Because ITF fellows are part-time graduate students at Marian University, they may be eligible for financial aid through Marian University's Office of Financial Aid. And then we're pleased to offer the Black Educators Excellence Cohort for its 3rd year. It's offered not only a transitional stipend for pre-service training, but also tuition reimbursement up to $2,500 paid out over the course of your first 3 years in the classroom. And fellows can also participate in AmeriCorps, and I will now hand it over to Haley, who will speak more about AmeriCorps.
Thank you so much, Katrina. I'm happy to be here. And again, my colleague Joy is here to answer any questions you have in the chat, so please ask away. You are going to be invited to attend another informational event about TNTP AmeriCorps in the spring. And then when you enroll with ITF and start training, you'll receive a lot of support and additional details on how to enroll with the program. So just consider this a quick overview on what TNTP AmeriCorps offers. The National AmeriCorps is a network of local, state, and national service programs that connects more than 75,000 Americans each year in service to meet our country's critical needs in education, public safety, health, and the environment. So as an Indianapolis Teaching Fellow, you're able to enroll in this program because you're addressing a critical need in education through your work in the classroom. So the big theme of AmeriCorps is service. And as first-year teachers, you're using elements of service that help you connect your students to the community. And then the TNTP AmeriCorps program provides our members with training and resources for this service learning and volunteer recruitment. And then we connect you with community service opportunities throughout the year. One of the benefits of the program is that you have the option to place your existing federal loans in forbearance, and then AmeriCorps will repay the interest that is accrued on those loans during your service year. So this means during your first year in the classroom, you're pausing payment on federal student loans that have interest, and then have that interest repaid when you successfully complete the program after your first year. And finally, you're eligible to receive the Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award, which is worth, on the slide it says $6,195, but it's actually now $6,345, so a little higher, in exchange for this service. The Education Award can be used to offset the cost of certification. University providers like Marian repay existing loans or go toward future educational expenses. Obviously, you'd likely be applying your AmeriCorps Siegel Education Award toward Marian University tuition. It is important to note that this award and loan interest repayment are benefits that you receive only after you've completed your first year of service. So a big question that we get is whether this means that you're signing up for a lot of extra work in your first year at the same time that you're starting a career as a teacher? And the answer to that is no. Our program is really designed to complement the hard work you're already doing in the classroom. It recognizes that teaching is service. So you do have to meet some basic eligibility requirements, including completing a brief application and a background check. You also participate in about 5 hours of mandatory activities like info sessions and trainings, but everything else is voluntary. And Joy is dropping a more detailed list of these requirements in the chat. And we welcome you to reach out to us for more details on what this looks like. And again, we're going to have more info sessions and opportunities to learn. You can also explore the AmeriCorps website. But we're here to help you interpret what these requirements look like. But tonight, I really want to leave you with a bit of inspiration, because while we talk about the service award a lot, and that is really important, one of the greatest benefits is the act of service. And we find that our fellows really bring the passion and talent and imagination that they bring to the classroom, to these projects. And the sky's the limit. I mean, you can dream it up and then make it happen in your classrooms. And it's a lot of fun to plan and execute them for your students. For instance, an Indianapolis teaching fellow named Derek last year launched a multi-week service curriculum in which his students served meals at a homeless shelter, mentored younger students, and participated in neighborhood cleanup. We have other stories in Las Vegas. Colleen taught students to work through their conflicts through restorative justice tech models in weekly community circles. And then last year, because the COVID-19 happened in the middle of the school year, our TNTP AmeriCorps members pivoted to directly affect COVID through their service. So for instance, in Baltimore, one of our members helped her students through a letter writing campaign to advocate for increased funding for a neighborhood school that was very affected by COVID-19. And in New Orleans, a fellow named Abby led her students through a letter writing campaign to local hospital workers. So these are lessons and experiences that your students are going to take with them for the rest of their lives. And we want you to do it. So feel free to ask questions in the chat for the remainder of this webinar, or email us at americorps@tntp.org. Thank you very much.
Oh, Katrina, you're muted.
Thank you. So well, first of all, thank you, Haley, for your time to talk with us about AmeriCorps. And at this point, I will read all of the questions that you've submitted. I got some that were submitted prior to the webinar, and then I'll go through the question and answer and chat dropped ones as well. So Rico will be here to answer all questions. And then again, Joy will be here to answer questions within the chat about AmeriCorps. Okay. All right, so one question we have is, let's see here. All right, so we have one person who was asking about what the interview process looks like. The interview process is done through our program called VidCruiter. It is something that you can do from the comfort of your own home or somewhere where you have computer and internet access. You do not need to come to Indianapolis for that interview. So you'll see a series of pre-recorded questions, and you'll have to answer those questions in real time, just like a real interview, an in-person interview, I should say, but it'll all be recorded and submitted that way. Let's see. And then, so this question could be for Rico. How does the program at Marian University, what does it look like, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I think, you know what I mean, Haley really set me up for success with this one. You know what I mean? It's aligned to you being a full-time teacher in the classroom. It complements you. So the way that our program works out is, you know what I mean, during enrollment and during pre-service training, The ITF team, including myself, are your pseudo Marian professors that are supporting you in your quote unquote master's degree during the enrollment period. Now, when you get into year 1 and year 2, you're taking those classes on Tuesdays, Thursday nights, and some Saturdays. But it'll never compete with your school schedule. So you'll teach full time during the day, then you'll go to classes on Tuesdays, some Thursdays. We say some Saturdays because depending on your content area and the class that you're working with, that Saturday class might be a practicum, meaning you all come together and talk about a lesson plan, or we call them glows and grows for the week. So positives and negatives, pretty much being growing in community, or they could be alternative classes. So it really just depends on that professor. But we really just want to stress the emphasis on how this complements you as a full-time teacher. The cohort model works in tandem. So myself and Dr. Newton, who's the director for ITF, regularly meet with the Marian staff. You'll notice, similarly to how Katrina and I interact during enrollment and at the finalist stage, that same relationship will happen between myself and Marian in enrollment. So when it comes to ITF, we think of it like a stool, with 3 legs. That first leg is ITF, Indianapolis Teaching Fellows. The second leg is Marian University, so you're a part-time master's student. And that third leg is your school community, so where you're going to be teaching full-time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rico. And about Glows and Grows, I went through the program a long time ago in another city, but I still have all of my Glows and Grows because they really mean a lot when you're going through as a first-year teacher. Let's see. Another question is, are there mentors available for fellows? Can you tell us a little bit more about what that mentorship looks like, how fellows are paired, and whatever information you could provide?
Absolutely. So we have 3, I like to call it our sphere of influence. So really 3 areas where we help our fellows connect to our alumni community, but also to school leaders. Whether or not you're working for one principal or a school leader, we're one big education community. So for us individually, when it comes to those relationships and those partnerships, it starts in enrollment. So, the intent that you put in your application responses, the welcome call that you have with me, that helps me get to know you. The next up are our alumni engagement activities. So you'll have opportunities to, 1, attend alumnus talks. So it's kind of like a talk show style webinar, similar to how we're doing right here, except you would all be on camera. The alumni on camera would be completely transparent with how their experience was. I think one thing I love about our program is we talk about as much of the good as the bad. We grow just as much as anyone else does. And when I say the bad, it's we grow from year to year. And one of our 2019 fellows, Haley touched on it earlier, Derek, he was one of the first fellows that I had met coming into the landscape and was just so passionate about the program because of how challenged he was through his prep process. So when it comes to school hiring, when it comes to matching you with mentors, again, it all complements how you're coming into the landscape. So if you're coming into the teaching profession, first time, have never had an experience, we might pair you with someone who had a similar experience at that point. So you all can talk about the intersections of your identity, but also what it looks like coming into the classroom. But then again, you might have a specific part of your identity that you want to match up with. That's going to come with building a relationship with our program staff. So outside of the alumnus talks, we do offer one-to-one mentorship opportunities, but that comes closer to pre-service training once we get closer to that period.
Awesome. Thank you, Rico. Be sure to drop any questions that you have in the chat or the question answer. It's very quiet out there, but I'm sure you've got some questions. Now is your chance to ask them. We've got Rico here. We've got AmeriCorps here. It is your chance to ask questions. So drop those in. But in the meantime, I have another one that was entered in prior to the webinar. And this person asks, what is hiring looking like for this year? I know I mentioned earlier that the process has already started. Could you talk maybe a little bit more about the process and about what things are looking like for the year?
Yeah, I think one thing that ITF really leaned on is our relationships with all of our school partners. I think everyone in the world wants to be in person, but that's not a reality right now. So for us, school hiring is completely virtual. What that looks like right now is you are provided 3 checklist items similar to what Katrina talked about earlier, specific to supporting you in that. One is the ITF resume. So we provide you a template that all of our principals, all of our school leaders are familiar with. So you don't have to worry about spending time on the formatting, on setting up what it looks like. We provide you that. Secondly, is going to be a school hiring bio. We provide you examples of how to pull from your previous work experience so you can transfer it over into legible teaching experience. Though if many of our fellows come in not realizing that they have experience as being a camp counselor or being a tutor that they can highlight within that school hiring bio to start that conversation with the principal. And then third is mock interviewing. You know what I mean? This is where it comes with my position. If you're nervous, let's practice. I mean, I think that's one of the best parts about our program is the coaching support. Just an hour before this call, one of our fellows has an interview set up for Monday. She was a little bit nervous, so wanted to walk through some of the questions that she could be asked. And really, it's just getting over those nerves. So honestly, when it comes to the school hiring process, it's going extremely well. You mean our school partners are starting to look at resumes, interviews are being scheduled. As Katrina said earlier, we've had 3 fellows recently get hired. So it's more of an exciting time for you all to join in enrollment.
Thank you, Rico. That led me to another question. So if you're interviewing for a teaching position without teaching experience, what do you think is one of the most important things to talk about or to convey in your job interview?
Absolutely. Your why. And when I say your why, it's why are you coming to teaching? I mean, that's something I really want all of you to think about in this process. I think our application does an incredible job at setting you up for success with that. But truth be told, I mean, you're going to get the training, you're going to get the support, you're going to get the coaching. But what our principals are looking for are individuals to join their staff. You know what I mean? Who is Rico? Who is Katrina? Who is Haley? Who is Dawn? Who is Joy? You know what I mean? When it comes to the school staff, because at the end of the day, I mean, one of the benefits of joining a longstanding program is that we have relationships throughout the city. We have alum that are still working, we're held accountable. With that being said, we wanna make sure that we're providing that best experience, but ultimately it comes back to the relationships that you're building, so.
Awesome. Thank you. So you mentioned that hiring is completely virtual. Are you anticipating that site visits and hiring events will be virtual in the spring as well? Or is there a chance for those to be in person?
Yeah, so I think this is, especially for our out-of-staters on the call, this is a benefit of enrolling earlier. So we are being responsive to the landscape. So our first site visit is scheduled for early March. So for those on the call, you know, I mean, if you are excited about joining, what the site visit is the equivalent of taking a snapshot of the program. You know, I mean, from 8 to 12, you'll sample what coaching looks like. You'll be able to meet coaches at ITF, look at a lesson plan, do a sample observation. And then from 1 to 5, you'll be able to be a part of a virtual hiring fair with recruiters, talent managers, and principals from our district, innovation, and charter schools. Now, all that to say, the reason why, I mean, we're so confident in this is because, again, when it comes to the process of a fellow getting to know a principal, it's not necessarily an interview, it's a get to know you. You know what I mean? You've done the hard part of applying to the program and getting to the process. Not to say that a job is guaranteed, but again, our principals are truly looking for who you are as an individual. And the best way to do that is to talk about your why, being able to talk about coming into the program, but also understanding that we are in an adaptable and flexible landscape.
Thank you. We've got a question here from Aubrey who would like to know, what is the community of fellows like? In a non-COVID world, are there gatherings that are not training or school related where fellows can interact together?
Yes, Aubrey. So we have social activities rotating throughout the year. One of the biggest is our cohorts. You know, I mean, we typically are enrolling year to year. So there's always a cohort coming in. There's always a cohort going out. There's always a cohort that's recently graduating. So I'll talk about the life cycle coming in. So Aubrey, right now, I mean, you're on the welcome webinars, or not welcome webinars, the info webinars. The hope is that you'll either finish up your application or start it. You'll get through enrollment, and then you'll become a part of the community. So going back to those spheres of support, we have 3 core areas that we do event programming for. That first is the outer sphere, and that's going to be the entire cohort. So for the 2020 cohort, we had over 90 people who started training. The youngest, we had people who were just graduating college and those who were re-entering the workforce from retirement. So it was every type of life experience and perspective in between. But truth be told, that means there were a lot of stories to be told. So our program creates the environment. In an in-person world without COVID, that would be setting up a dinner or a networking event, going out and hosting a board game night, or doing a professional development. Now, I know that does not sound fun at first, but what it would be is all of us coming together, focusing on a topic. One thing that we recently did was focusing on multilingual learners. We actually had someone from TNTP come out with our 2020 cohort and alums that wanted to get a little bit of additional enrichment work. And then after, we had a happy hour and got to connect with each other. So ultimately, the community is a community of storytellers. You know what I mean? We all come from different walks of life, but all share this passion of wanting to support great communities.
Awesome. Thank you, Rico. And I've noticed too on the cohort Facebook pages that some folks make plans to get together. Not so much now, but prior to COVID, I even saw like last year, I think during COVID, someone put on a backyard concert and like had socially distanced final or fellow activities in her backyard. So people finding some ways to get together. Definitely. That's a great question.
Yeah, and I think an extreme of what we've seen is Kayla Johnson, who was recently Kayla Meehan, actually added on a few bridesmaids from fellows that she attended PST with before her wedding, because again, you all go through an intense training together. You learn about your identity, you learn about who you are, how that comes to the classroom, and those are relationships that stick. So when you come out of the cohort, you not only have your class who you've gone with, but you've got everyone from behind and those who are coming forward. And then ultimately during pre-service training, your coaches are not only full-time ITF staff, but are also full-time teachers that are working. So you're not necessarily working with coaches that are far removed from the classroom or don't have those in-demand strategies.
Like I mentioned earlier, went through a program myself. So it was in 2007. So we're talking a while ago. And there are still people from my cohort who I keep in touch with, including my coach. And during pre-service training, we even had like a baby shower for one of our fellows. And you really do develop those like close relationships with people. It's a good group of people to like bounce ideas off of and get support and things like that. So it's going through a program like this as a cohort with a group of like-minded people going through a similar experience is really invaluable. Any other questions?
So Aubrey, Harvey, Kaylin, Matthew, expecting to see all of you in enrollment since all of your questions are answered.
I'll give everybody a few minutes just in case there is something that you'd like to know. Any last calls for questions?
I think I can just go ahead and throw one out there. I think one of the biggest ones that I've gotten on my welcome call is how are fellows evaluated? You know what I mean? And that is a big question. You know what I mean? When it comes to anything, is evaluation. That's something we want to lean into. So we are a program that loves feedback. I think for me personally, even at TNTP, learning that feedback doesn't always come in the box that you'd like it to come. You know what I mean? It can come. I mean, we were talking about glows and grows earlier. If you're truly investing in the program and you're truly wanting to reflect on that, sometimes it's gonna come off like, whoa, Rico, like, what do you mean? But rather than saying, whoa, Rico, it's a partnership. So our program is truly built on that active and responsive feedback. So it's understanding that, and at the end of the day, you're going to be able to sit down with your coach and have a coaching conversation about it. You're going to be able to talk to an observer and possibly talk about something that you weren't seeing. So the secret sauce to that is being able to have that conversation, to lean in and to ask questions. Now, what a fellow is not is somebody who backs away from that, who is defensive, who is not seeking out additional feedback. So truth be told, when it comes to our program, it's a partnership. So regardless that, you know what I mean, Katrina and I and my colleagues on the call work for the organization, we are partners with you in terms of helping you to build your career to be champions for our students. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Rico. Do we choose what subject or what level of education we teach? That's another question. That's a great question. So in our application, you'll be able to indicate your preference for subject area. And usually that also kind of goes hand in hand with the grade level. So if you're looking at, early childhood, then you're talking about the earlier grades. And then if you're looking at a subject area, something like English or Spanish or math, Then you're talking about secondary, which is middle school and high school, 6 through 12. And then if you're interested in keeping things open and you have a desire to teach special education, that's something that is from K through 12. So it really depends, but you can indicate that on your application. There's eligibility requirements for teaching a secondary subject area like math or science. You should have a degree in that subject area. But if you don't, but you are really interested in teaching it, you have experience in it, a passion for it, I would still really recommend that you apply, just because you do have the opportunity to test into subject areas through ITF. Anything that you want to add, Rico, to that?
No, that was perfect. And to be honest, Aubrey, I mean, when it comes to, you know, I mean, choosing a subject area, it also is about your why. You know, I mean, what are your experiences in coming in? And if you don't have experiences, what are your hopes in who Aubrey is as a teacher? I mean, I have this conversation with our fellows because, I mean, when you come in, if you're selected into education, your elementary education K through 6, so that's still even a bracket to choose from. But ultimately, that's benefiting you because you're not going into the landscape with a narrow lens. I mean, you don't want to come in to the program, I only want to work for 6th grade. I only want to work for 3rd grade, because what happens is that limits you. So what we do as a program is try to let you know, this is what you're eligible to teach for by the state. It's not our program telling you no. It's not us as individuals. It's the way that the state is set up for transition to teaching. So if you are curious, if you like to do a little bit of research, if you look up the transition to teaching permit for Indiana, that's what you'll be teaching on. So truthfully, that's where our eligibility comes from. But ultimately, it's responsive to your needs and the questions that you have.
To answer your follow-up question, it depends. So if you have not submitted your application, you can probably go in there and change it. If not, then I want you to email me, and I dropped my email address in the chat, info@tntpteachingfellows.org, and I can help you through whatever you need. So if you're not able to go back in and change it yourself, I will put you in touch with the people that can help you do that. So anytime, for anyone in general, you have a question, whether it's program related, application related, or anything that you're wondering about Indianapolis Teaching Fellows, I am your person. Rico will be your person after you enroll, but I am your person from the moment you start an application and indicate that you would like to teach in Indianapolis until you actually enroll. So anytime you have a question or an issue or a concern, reach out to me. I'm always available for calls as well. I can put my phone number in there as well. So any questions you have, anytime you need help, I'm your person. All right, any other questions? All right, so that will be what we have time for this evening. If you had a question and you didn't feel comfortable putting it in the chat, you can always email it to me or call me. I want to say thank you to you all for being here and for being such good active participants. And I want to also thank Rico, Haley, and Joy for being here this evening as well, to give us such great information about Indianapolis Teaching Fellows and the AmeriCorps program. So thank you so much for attending. I hope that you've learned a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing you apply. Our next deadline is coming up really quickly on Tuesday, February 23rd. Don't feel like you have to wait. And again, here is my contact information if you need anything or have any questions. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your night.